We are going to work on our Unit 9 right triangle foldable. We're going to work on trigonometric ratios. So turn to the 6th flap, I believe it is. It's the green on top, yellow on bottom, and it should look like this. The top of mine is cut off, but this first word should be trigonometry. Is the study of the measurements of triangles. We will do 3 trig ratios. They are sine, cosine, and I'm going to have to move this, tangent. These equations relate to the measure of one angle in a right triangle to a ratio of 2 sides. Because of angle-angle similarity, all triangles with the same angle measure are similar and will have the same ratios. The values are stored in the calculator, so we will have to use our calculator. So this is what they give you on the star chart. They tell you that sine of A is opposite leg over hypotenuse, and that cosine A is adjacent leg over hypotenuse, and that tangent of A is opposite leg over adjacent leg. So you will always be given this stuff so that whenever you take tests, I don't expect you guys to memorize it ever. Okay, so if we are talking about A in this case, whenever we're talking about sides, of course, this will always point to the hypotenuse. That will never ever change no matter which angle you're talking about. So this was always the hypotenuse. But whenever you're talking about sides, the thing that is right next to the angle you're talking about will be adjacent. And the side that is across from the angle you're talking about will be opposite. So on the second triangle, if you are talking about angle B, of course, the hypotenuse will not change. This is still the hypotenuse. But then the adjacent becomes the one right next to B. So adjacent's now on this side. And then opposite becomes the one across from B. So the opposite is now this side. So it changes depending on which angle you're talking about. One thing that you can use to remember this stuff, even though you have it readily available for you, is SOHCAHTOA. There's actually not a real good place to write this down, but it's always good to have it. It's just so much easier to remember than always looking at all of this information. So I guess if you can fit it right here, it's SOHCAHTOA. And all this is this, all of this information combined into one little word. So it's SOHCAHTOA, so that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that's what SOHCAHTOA means. So before any problem that you ever do, you need to write out SOHCAHTOA so that you can remember. This stuff you don't necessarily have to write out every time, but the word SOHCAHTOA you need to write out every time. So I'm actually going to move this because we're about to do a problem. right over here. And so it says write all three trig equations for both acute angles. So let's talk about, well, first of all, there is one side that will not change no matter what angle you're talking about, and it is this side right here. This will always, 5 will always be your hypotenuse no matter what. If we are talking about 53, the one right next to it, 3, is now your adjacent, and the one across from it, 4, is your opposite, if you're talking about 53. So, sine of 53 will equal, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so opposite 4 over my hypotenuse 5, so 4 over 5. The cosine of 53 equals, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 3 over 5. The tangent of 53 is opposite over adjacent, so opposite 4 over adjacent 3. Now, whenever we change angles, remember that our opposite and adjacent will change. So if I'm talking about 37 now, 4 becomes my adjacent, and 3 becomes my opposite. So now we're looking at the green part. And I'm going to erase the red so that it doesn't confuse you as we're talking about these things. So the sine of 37 is now, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so 3 over 5. The cosine of 37, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 4 over 5. And tangent of 37 is opposite over adjacent, so 3 over 4. Now, to solve these things, you're going to need a calculator. It says, calculator steps. Calculator must be in degree mode. And I'm going to show you what that means in just a minute using my calculator, my digital calculator. It will not start that way during STAR test. It also you're not guaranteed it'll start that way on the rest of the day. So you have to make sure that you do degree. Every time that your calculator is reset, it will go back to what we call radians. So you've got to make sure that you change it to degree, or your answers will be completely wrong. When you know the angle measure, press sine, cosine, tangent, then angle measure. That means the degree, to find decimal version of ratio. When you know the ratio, press second sine, second cosine, or second tan, then the ratio to find the angle. So, you can get out your calculator. And in this calculator, you look under mode. So under mode is where you'll find it, which is why it says mode. So under mode, it says radian and then degree. So you have to make sure that degree is the one highlighted. In this case, it's not. So we got to come down here and highlight degree. So now it is in degree mode. To get out of this, you press, if you look right above mode, it says quit, press second mode. That's also how you can get yourself out of just about anything on your calculator. Okay, so in this case, we have to figure out if we're using sine, cosine, or tangent. So always, always, always write SOHCAHTOA at the top of your paper, whatever you're working on. And since we know this angle measure, the one right next to it, this is adjacent, we know adjacent, and the one across from it is opposite. So which one of these uses A and O? This one uses O and H. This one uses A and H. This one uses O and A. So it is tangent that we will be using. So we write tan of 38 is equal to, and tangent is opposite over adjacent, so x over 17. So when 17 is in your denominator, all you're going to do is take this 17 and put it in front and multiply. So it will be 17 times the tangent of 38 is equal to your x, and that's what we're going to put in our calculator. So 17 times, and here's your tangent button, tan, 38, close your parentheses and hit enter, and there you go. Usually sides we want to round to the nearest hundredth, so it's 13.28. Now I'm going to show you what would happen if you did not put this in degree, because it will give you a completely different answer. So I'm going to put mine back on radian. I'm going to do the exact same thing. And see, there is a gigantic difference between radian and degrees. So you have to make sure that your mode is in degrees. Okay, for this one, we're looking at this angle, and of course, across from the 90-degree angle, this will always be your hypotenuse. And then this one right next to the angle will be your adjacent. So we know adjacent and hypotenuse. You have to see which one uses adjacent and hypotenuse. Well, C uses A and H, so cosine of 50 is A over H, so 35 over X. When X is in your denominator, you simply flip-flop your X and whatever you have over on the left. So X will be on the left now, and then cosine of 50 will be in your denominator. That's how you solve that problem. Put all that in your calculator, and it will give you your answer. So 35 divided by cosine of 50. And it's 54.45. In this problem, we are looking at this angle. This side that's right next to it is adjacent. This side that is across from it is opposite. So opposite and adjacent. Tangent uses opposite and adjacent. So tan of x is equal to, and it's opposite over adjacent, so 25 over 17. To solve for this x, we are actually going to use this button in our calculator that looks like this. It's to the negative one. And in your parentheses, you're going to put 25 over 17. So if you look in your calculator, here's my tan button. Right above it, it says tan to the negative 1. So we're going to hit second tangent. So second tan 25 divided by 17. Close your parentheses, and there's your answer. And whenever we're actually looking for the degrees for our angle measure, we are going to round to the nearest degree, so the whole number. So 55, but it's 0.7, so we're going to make this 56 degrees. This next problem, of course, across from our 90-degree angle, this is always our hypotenuse. and we're looking at this angle. This side is across from this angle, so this is our opposite. So which one uses opposite and hypotenuse? That's sine. So sine of x is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, so 14 over 32. And whenever we're looking for the x, you do sine to the negative 1 is 14 over 32. Get out your calculator, and right above your sine is your sine to the negative 1, and right above your cosine is the same thing. So if you needed the cosine one, it's there also. So second sine 14 divided by 32. Close your parentheses, enter. And it's 25.9, so it's 26 degrees. This concludes this part of our flap.